So, hello, welcome everyone to this first meeting for the Kyma Knative Integration working group. And the main agenda item for this working group is we want to first have everyone updated on the goal of this working group, what we want to achieve as a part of this, and then what's the current status, how far we have achieved, what all things are working, what all things are planned, and then based on that, based on the current status, there is a proposal from Shimon that he will be sharing. And then we can also work on the leader election and then maybe also the logistics regarding the scheduling of the meeting and then the timing and everything. So let me quickly go through the goal first. Yeah. So we have two main goals as a part of this working group we want to achieve. The first thing is that we want to enable the Knative serving in Kyma. We are already using STO and then the gateway functionality from uh, uh, basically at the underlying layer. But we want to see that if we can leverage some of the Knative serving features to build on top of this. Of course, this will be behind the feature flag so that this can be optionally enabled, but by default it will use the current behavior. And same thing for the Knative eventing. So we have the Kyma eventing that is currently backed by Nats as a underlying matching implementation, and we want to go towards the goal of pluggability. And the first thing we want to do is to integrate the Knative eventing and then use the Kyma eventing for those APIs to sit on top of the Knative eventing, so that Nats is one option at some point, and then it should be possible to have another bus implementations. They are essentially called cluster channel provisioners as a part of the Knative eventing terminology. And again, this will also be a kind of a feature flag or switch that will dynamically uh, define the behavior, whether we are using the Knative eventing or we are using the current implementation that is simply backed by Nets. So this is more about the goal, these two high-level goals that we want to achieve. And then maybe I can now give it to uh, PM so that he can provide the details about the current status and the progress that has been made so far.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Maybe the rest could mute yourself because we hear some voices. Okay, thank you. So we already did some work and we had a progress with Knative in the Kyma. Essentially, we did some POCs, actually 2 POCs, to check how we can integrate Kyma with Knative and how this can work together. And as an outcome of our POCs, we have a small proposal, which Shimon will present right after me. And Shimon, if you could now just give us some input about this. You are muted.
Yeah, can I share my screen, if I may? Do you know how it's done to share my screen? Or maybe you can just open the proposal.
There's a button on the bottom.
Sure, here it is. Okay. Someone who's sharing needs to stop sharing.
Okay, it is me. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I was not sure whether it can be overridden or not. So yeah.
I will share mine now. And it's this one. Okay. Can you see the proposal?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's not VIP any longer. Okay. So, hello everybody. What we were doing during a couple of weeks, last weeks, we're doing POCs regarding how to run Kyma on top of Knative, what challenges they are and how to solve them. We fought a couple of problems, which I will describe in a minute, and came with a final conclusion, what's the best, in our opinion, way to integrate Kyma to integrate Kyma with Knative. And what we want to ask you is to approve or to make a decision, just yes or no, if you are going this way or not. What were the factors that we needed to have been taken into consideration? First of all, Kyma needs to work without Knative as it was working before. There there cannot be any change in Kyma's behavior if there's no Knative. Second of all, we need to check how it's difficult to upgrade to newer version of Knative, because Knative is very rapidly being developed. The next thing is how we can extend the solution, because we need to also integrate eventing and serverless in next steps. What's the burden put on the maintenance of the system, and how well it works with overall what we want to do with Kyma and how it should look like. And we came up with 3 problems that we needed to solve. The first is how to run both Knative and Kyma on the same Kubernetes cluster, because they both use Istio and there may be some conflicts, and how to solve them. And the second problem is how to install Knative and how to fit it into our installation process. And the third problem, last but not least, is how to version Knative with Kyma. So let me start with the first one. How do we want to run Kyma and Knative on the same Kubernetes cluster? As it appears, there wasn't much problem because they both run in separate namespaces. So they could run out of the box in the same Kubernetes cluster without conflicting with each other, because there is only one shared resource, it's Istio, but Knative is running on Istio without any intrusive changes, and because of that, it's working perfectly with our Istio version of Istio. There was one problem. Knative uses its own ingress gateway, which makes it another entry point to Kubernetes cluster. So there appeared that we have 2 options. First of all, we can leave it as it is and make Knative use different ingress gateway than Kyma. And the advantage of the solution is it's easy. We don't need to do any changes in any of those components. But the problem is we have to maintain 2 ingress gateways. It puts more burden on DNS management, deployment, debugging, TLS certificates, etc., etc., etc. The second approach is to move all the traffic that goes to Kyma through Knative ingress gateway. And the previous solution was proved by Jakub Dziechciewicz that it's working with perfectly. The second one was done by me. I basically switched all the gateways we have to Istio gateway to Knative gateway, and I had to resolve some conflicts. And well, in the end, it also worked. What's the advantage of the solution? It's easier to maintain the system because there's only a single point of entry. There is less DNS management because we only need one domain. There is less certificates management because of the same reason. And we're more tightly integrated with Knative, which is better. The disadvantages, we need to modify Knative to work, because Knative is by default have some monitoring stuff which needs to be disabled. They have TLS disabled, which have to be enabled too. And the other disadvantage is that Knative needs to be more tightly integrated with our installation process, because we need to do some changes in the deployment, so we cannot just install Knative and forget about it. The second problem is how to fit Knative into installation process. And because we have the principal batteries included, Knative have to be installed during our installation. We cannot put the burden on the user. Knative has this approach of providing only YAML files instead of Helm charts. So we came with another 2 approaches to the problem. First of all, just use the YAMLs, create a Kubernetes job which picks the YAMLs and apply them to the Kubernetes cluster and checks if everything is installed properly. This approach makes future upgrades of Knative easier, because we do not do any changes in YAMLs. We only pick them and install them. But there are two problems. First of all, this is not how installer is intended to be used. And the second one, which is tied coupled to this one, we make a general rule to avoid bash scripts. We want to remove them from the system as much and avoid them as much as we can. So we need to create another script, another program that needs to be maintained in order to install Knative. And the second approach is to wrap the Knative YAMLs into a Helm chart and just apply it as another component via installer. What's the advantages of this approach? First of all, it's how the installer is meant to be used. This is how it was designed and how we would like to use it. There is no additional tool that needs to be introduced to the system, and charts are a lot easier to extend than bash scripts. So from extensibility point of view, which is important because we need to introduce eventing and serverless later, this approach is a little bit better. What's the disadvantage? And it's not a small one. We have to do a lot of changes in the YAMLs. Thus, the upgrades of Knative later will be harder until they introduce their own Helm chart. But I will speak about that one later. And the last problem we had to resolve was how to version Knative in Kyma. The first approach was to not check in YAMLs into Kyma repository, but just store the URLs to specific releases. And this has a big advantage of not having the YAMLs in our repository. We don't have to maintain them. And but we depend on availability of external files. And unfortunately, this approach cannot be used if we want to embed Knative YAMLs into chart, because we have to modify them. So we cannot just download them and apply them. And the other approach was to just download the release and store it into Kyma repository. And it gives us better control over what we have and what we are installing. We can play with it, we can change it and customize it. But on the other hand, we have to maintain it. What we propose as a solution to the three problems is, first of all, use Knative Ingress Gateway, because it makes our life easier when it comes to managing a living cluster. And it makes introducing, and it gives us better integration with Knative, which is the point of our work. The other Ingress Gateway will be still deployed, but will not be exposed and will be unused. It will be out there, but no traffic will go through it. Because we need to introduce a lot more changes later because of eventing and serverless, we also think that using the Helm chart is a better alternative, because it gives us a more powerful language and more readable language to introduce customizations to Helm, to Knative, than another bash script. And that's why we chose it. And also because we chose to use Helm chart, we cannot use raw URLs. We have to check in the Knative YAMLs into Kyma repository. And that gives us the answers to the three problems we had to solve. One disclaimer, as Gabrav said before, installing Kyma with Knative is optional, and we introduced a feature flag of installer override global Knative, which enables Knative installation and changes Kyma configuration to run on top of it. Without it, with the global Knative flag set to false or unset, the system will remain as it was before. The question to the working group is, do we embrace this approach or not? And what are advantages of this solution? It's easier to, as I said, it's easier to debug and maintain. It's easier to extend. We are in the because we are we have Knative YAMLs checked into our version control system. We are independent of Knative release cycle, and the problem with having YAMLs converted to Helm chart can be solved by contributing to Knative with the chart we have, and added the chart to their product. What's the problem with this approach? First of all, it's a little bit more complicated to debug because, on the other hand, because we have two different entry points when to Kyma when working in Knative mode or without Knative mode, because in Knative mode we work with Knative Ingress Gateway, and in normal mode we work with Istio Ingress Gateway. This problem, however, will be resolved in next releases of Knative because they decided to abandon their Knative Ingress Gateway and move to Istio Ingress Gateway, which is also a benefit for us because we will not have to do the integration again. We're already integrated with them. We'll just have to change the name of the gateway. And the problem is upgrading Knative because all the changes they do to the YAMLs, we have to move manually to our repository because we have our changes in the YAMLs to integrate it with Helm. And basically, that's all I have to say about what have been done and what needs to be approved. Do you have any questions?
Okay, I have one question.
Go on.
So I see that there is already some kind of a plan to contribute this chart back. So is there any kind of discussions happening with the Knative community, or is it something that is just proposed right now and then we want to discuss it later?
No, there wasn't any discussion yet because the chart is, for now, it's really not production ready. It doesn't have many many parameters, etc. Moreover, what I have seen on their Slack channel is they're not really ready or willing right now to include the Helm charts because they have their own problems. But it is on the roadmap. Okay. And that's how we want to solve the problem of maintaining it by us to contribute it to them.
Yeah, makes sense. I was just asking that at least just to get their opinion that if this is something that they are aligned with or not.
Yes, this is an open discussion also at Knative, because
exactly.
Also in eventing, coming from Google, they are not really supporting Helm charts, This is a small issue, and I suppose that the community can push them, and if someone contributed it, then this will like a normal way. Yes, it's a little different there.
Okay, the other thing, maybe it is something that we need to go back and then give some thought about this, is for the eventing, how should we approach? Should we have a separate flag for the eventing, or should it be just one flag that already decide whether Knative and then the Knative eventing is getting installed or not? Because it could still happen that we have option that we can use the Knative serving and then use it in the API gateway and then the service mesh, but maybe we still want to not use the Knative eventing or vice versa. I don't know. At least I see that we need to give it a thought. Maybe.
From the Helm point of view, it should be a separate flag in the values. However, what also could be mentioned here, there is a flag if you would like to run Knative with Kyma. You have a --native for the local, for example, installation, a flag that actually tells that we want to have Knative enabled. Yeah. And then once this is used and is the feature flag is propagated to the installer, you could also directly in the overrides make another flag, for example, a native eventing enabled. So the prerequisite is that you have native enabled, and if you want to have a Knative eventing, you also need to have this flag as set to true, additional flag, right? But the main prerequisite is that we have Knative enabled.
Yeah. But Gaurav, this is another complexity. I'm not sure if it.
That's what I said, that we need to give it a thought.
To extend the matrix to have again to test a lot of things because
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I just said we need to just maybe give it some thought and see that what's the best way to go forward. Have another flag or do something other around.
you know, I
So for me,
suppose that
it's
step
open.
by step we'll go into Knative direction to have also EMS integrated only with Knative, so that it could. If you are on eventing part also.
I have posted to the chat link to the documentation, which is also worth mentioning because we have this proposal, but additionally, we have documented how to right now test Knative with Kyma. And I will post links also to the Slack after the meeting. So you can try out right now from the master branch all the Knative changes that Shimon proposed right now.
Okay.
And your concern are that the upgrade of Knative will be very difficult. For me, is also this is true and false and the same. It's not black and white because as a Kyma, we have to be sure that the installation from Knative, which is coming from us, is working with us. You know, that they are changing a lot of stuff, and this could be also a good thing to have now in the first step the Helm charts from Knative. Because if something is changing, we can react on our code. For example, if they are changing some CRDs or something like that, this could happen.
Yes, we also have, when working with the Knative, we had problems in the beginning because somehow on master branch, they changed names of some components and our scripts were not working any longer. So yes, having having everything checked in gives us a lot of control.
And also for our customer, they should be sure that if they are installing Kyma and Knative, all is working.
Knative haven't heard about backwards compatibility.
Yes, till now, yes.
And I think for some time it might not be there. The other thing I have is, if I understand it correctly, there were some conflicts with the monitoring part. But if we install the Knative Lite release, does it still give us conflicts, or does it exclude all these monitoring aspects?
Knative comes in several releases, as you mentioned. Knative Lite does not solve the problem. We have started with Knative Lite, but Knative Lite still includes some monitoring parts. Not all of them, but some of them. Unfortunately, Knative serving comes also in release non-monitoring, which completely disables the monitoring, and we have used that.
Okay. Yeah, that was just maybe I was missing that point. So thanks. Okay. So for me, at least it looks fine that if we go with this current decision, because it looks to me out of those two less complex, and then of course it's not the best thing, but it's better than the other one for me.
And it works now. I have also tested it.
Yeah.
And, yes, this is a very good thing.
And it works on Windows Radu for you.
No.
Yeah, the stuff is.
And also on Linux, I have tested it.
Okay, yeah, that's nice.
Yes, now it's time basically for all the community members to
logistics part,
verify by your own, read the documents, and make a review by yourself.
I will also include all of those PRs and issues that were created during the POCs to this proposal, so everyone can play with it and knows what the code was changed.
Okay. So, shall I take back the control and then we can move with the agenda, or is there something else we need to discuss for this topic?
I'm done.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think you need to stop sharing. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so the next item in the agenda is that okay, we should select the leaders, and I think we can also add one more item, if I may. We should talk about the meeting schedule. Yep. So yeah, so let's start with the leader elections. And I see that we don't have too many people here, but out of these guys, I know that you guys are already working very kind of deep into the Knative. So Radu and Shimon, maybe others. So one idea would be that someone who's like deeply engaged would like to be the leaders for this group and then take it further. Radu,
You're
would
muted,
you like
Shimon.
to? So
Shimon wanted to say something, but he's muted.
okay, Shimon, please.
Yeah,
Share.
I was muted again. Yeah, I'm definitely willing to help with this one.
Mm-hmm. And Radu, what about you?
As a fallback, okay, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need at least 2 leaders, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because in the with the next meetings, a second leader or another leader is also making some notes, and it's easier for to have at least 2. So yeah, it's up to you, Radu.
Okay.
So yeah, there will be some logistics involved with the this meeting schedule, and then having all these things around organizing the meetings, recordings, and everything. But I think this is something the leaders can manage among themselves.
Exactly.
Yep. And of course, they are driving the agenda forward, so that will be interesting. And regarding the meeting schedule, so we saw that this was one of the slots that was like best fitting based on all the other meetings that we have around the working groups and the SIGs. So does it still looks like a right slot every Thursday from 2 to 3?
Yes, it's okay for me.
Maybe we could make it an hour earlier.
Yep, that's also my sentiment, because
Okay, 1 to 2.
SOS is exactly in the same hour, and I'm sometimes helping with it. And well, I'm just, if it's on the slot, I cannot help with the SOS.
So okay, so for me, I think it's fine. Yeah, having it from 1 to 2 also is not a problem. Any concern from anybody else? Okay, so no concerns. I imagine or I assume that it's all right. So
Can
yeah,
you write it down somewhere, Gareth?
yes, I can write it down. Just a moment.
And how frequently would you like to meet?
Yeah, that's the
Weekly,
next question.
bi-weekly, monthly?
I suggest that weekly in the beginning is a good idea to just get going.
Yes, I think also because next week perhaps we will talk with the first results from our POC integration from SAP.
So bi-weekly?
I would suggest weekly, at least in the beginning.
Okay.
Okay, yes, weekly for me.
Okay, we can go with weekly.
Okay. So for the new leaders of this working group, please remember that now you have to update the document on the community GitHub. And yes, send the invitation to the recurring meeting for the working group, right?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, then any open topics or anything else you guys, somebody else want to share or discuss?
Yes, maybe what's next, right? Let's assume that we have our proposal accepted, and we would like to have yet another meeting in the next week, according to proposed schedule. So, what are the plans for the next week, right? I would like to have the community review the document and play around with Kyma at least locally on Minikube with Knative. You can also play with GKE the documentation is provided. And then let's start digging into the eventing part, right?
Yeah, so I guess one thing which we discussed today, and then maybe it makes sense. So we also need to come up with the kind of a design first, that how the eventing should get installed. In fact, how the Kyma eventing on top of Knative should get installed. Maybe we should have some kind of a proposal around this. That will be our first idea. And at some point, we would like to start also working on the implementation part, where we can start using the Knative eventing APIs. But the first thing would be to have some kind of a proposal around this coming up.
Sure, agree.
Piotr, are you flying to Seattle next week or not?
No, I'm here
Okay.
locally.
Because it could be very interesting that someone can go. I didn't know that they have one day for Knative there, Knative open day.
Yeah, but I guess we'll have more chances to talk to the Knative guys, right? Last week they were also present in the office, right? In Munich.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So
One more question on my side. Do we have written a roadmap somewhere on our integration? So there is high level at least. So we know
right now not, but that's a good
this
point. I think we
ends.
should have that. Yep.
Yeah, basically the roadmap will be created once we will have the planned POCs done, and we will have documented outcomes that will be presented to the Kyma Council to make this final decision. Because some of the POC needs to be done first. Then, based on that, Kyma Council needs to approve or not the decisions, and then we can plan further.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Okay. So anything else anybody would like to add or comment or discuss? Okay. If not, then we can finish this meeting and then have the next meeting coming Thursday.
Yep, sure. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.